Welcome to EOS Town Hall. It's Monday, April 1st. Before we get started here, does anyone know any good April Fool's jokes or anything for anyone to be aware of? Anyone? No? Google is not buying Burning Man. That is not a real thing. So if anyone is seeing that, passing that news, you're definitely a fool. We here today are going to be gathered up talking about EOS, talking about EVB, and getting everybody ready for the big B1 June announcements. I think we've got somebody at the door here, Kedar. I think this might be the twins. Well, hopefully the Cybercode twins are in here to have fun with us today. Come on in. So, thank you for joining everybody here. We'd like to get discussing on with the EVB. EVB is the new name for the CVIB. Luckily, we have Ryan Betham here with us today, and Ryan, we were just about to go over your Medium post. You want to save us some of the TLDR and go over a little bit about what you posted about the voter bounties update recently?
Sure. Yeah. So I just tried to approach it in terms of just giving out the factual information that's been handed to me at this point and the proposals for people that just need to get up to date on it. We had 3 proposals for the history solution. Rio, Nairobi, Blocksmith, Detroit made up those 3 proposals. And out of those 3 for history, Rio has made available the Hyperion open source history solution, and will continue to support development of it as a part of this bounty program. Luiz, if you want to throw in some more details on that, I'm happy to let you give some more specifics if you want to right now.
Hey guys, well, Hyperion is an open source solution for basically ingesting the database, and instead of storing everything that came from the blockchain, what we kind of did was we structure the data ingest in a way that it only stores in some kind of actions, and Igor is the man to talk about it. He was supposed to get in here, but he thought the call was going to be at 1. So if you guys want to wait a little bit, he can explain further details. But we ingest just a few actions, and Hyperion is able to, from those actions that is stored, create a database for the EOS blockchain that is like 80% lighter than the actual database. We made a post about it on how it works in all the details. But yeah, it's actually just reverse engineering the process. And instead of ingesting all the data, we selected the actions that made sense and store them. And now when we need to give access to anyone from this database, we can just sort of use those actions to restructure it, and makes it in a much faster and lighter approach.
I actually I spoke with Igor pretty in depth. We were going to submit for the full history plugin as well. So I had talked with him for quite a while about the solution. And definitely it's interesting. I know you rip about a bunch of the inline actions out. There's a bunch of repetitive inline actions that occur. I hadn't gotten yet the full breakdown of. It worried me just in the slightest. Developers sometimes make weird calls, make weird references, and if the potential of it's something that has been moved out from the way of the normal data structure, although that it is a bad data structure from currently from the chain. It worries me a little bit that might not be some things could break. Whether or not it's going to happen will be a testament to Igor and everyone's diligence on making sure that it actually was, things that are getting moved or ripped out. But it did worry me. Now, I would imagine though, the proposal itself, when Igor gets here and talks about it, probably does cover it in full, and you can run it as full. The problem is, again, the size of the data set. There is a online tool from Google, their big data platform, the big data product that you can likely use in conjunction with this to be able to store the full set. So, I'm not sure. I am not sure, Ryan, if you want to get into that detail at all. I was aware that they had been looking at this lighter set, basically ripping out the inline actions because they are so repetitive, and it really does store a lot of information in repeated context. But yeah, I wanted to see your thoughts on that and kind of, I guess, the other proposals in the full history bounty and where they're at.
Yeah, sure. So I think for like the sake of time and organization here, being a non-technical person, I'm not gonna, I think, spend time trying to explain something and completely butchering it. So I'd rather let the professionals and the people that really know the subject well speak to that more clearly. So yeah, I would suggest we wait for Igor to get on, and I can just give an overview of the standby proposals real quick. And if you have any specific questions, let me know. I'm gonna have to get off in about 10 minutes or so from now. But does that make sense, or does that work for you guys?
That sounds good.
Cool. Yeah, Igor is going on in a little while, so I already reached him out. So.
Yeah, it looks like 30 minutes from now or so, Luiz. Yeah. So yeah, and then the other bounty, of course, is the standby proposal, or the testing standby ability to produce proposals. LibertyBlock, of course, has submitted one. ChainRift, and then Node 1. So just to give like a quick overview, the Node 1 approach would be to use a testnet, basically as an oracle for the mainnet for ability to produce. The ChainRift solution comes in two phases. One involves proxy voters actually installing a contract on their account that would essentially sync all of those votes such that BEPs would be put into production position, the 21st spot. And the second phase, which seems to have more support across the community so far, and is something that we're suggesting they just go to, and I think that they want to as well for my communication with them, would involve a soft fork whereby there would be the ability to test all standby producers. And I guess going to the LibertyBlock solution then too, it sounds like it would require a hard fork and would test the 22nd to 25th spot in production. And as mentioned, I think people would like more details from you guys in terms of like how all these changes would work. And currently, I think there's around 5 million votes right now for the LibertyBlock approach, and around 7 million for ChainRift at this moment. I didn't check this morning, but that's where it was standing last. And so yeah, those the high level details.
Thank you for the high level details, Ryan. I'll have Kedar shoot into compare and contrast. We've got ChainRift, Node 1, and our solution here. What are some of your thoughts? Have you gone over the ChainRift solution?
I've gone over the ChainRift solution. I haven't gone over the. Can you guys hear me fine, by the way?
Everybody hear Kedar?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I've gone through the ChainRift solution. The Node 1 solution I haven't gone through, but it sounds like they're just using a testnet as well. So it sounds like they're just going to say you have to hook into a testnet if you're a standby block producer. Produce blocks for it. Does that sound about right?
Yep.
Okay.
So yeah, what in the ChainRift solution do you like? Do you think is good? And ultimately, are people looking for people for us to take cues from these things, the suggestions, and possibly come up with a more full solution? If you had to look back on our submission for this, is there anything you would look to change, and or is there you look at the ChainRift solution, is it one that you feel is better than the LibertyBlock solution?
The ChainRift solution, I like that it can be implemented immediately without a hard fork. That part's really nice. But there's going to be a lot. So the trade-off for that is going to be that there's going to be a lot of schedule changes from what I can tell. We're going to be voting people constantly in and out of this thing, even if I think they're proposing once every 2 hours. We want to change that. That's going to be a lot of schedule changes, and we're eventually going to have to do IPC at some point. I think everybody's been kind of avoiding it jointly. Block One's been avoiding it. The block producers kind of been avoiding it, like taking on that challenge. At some point, someone's going to have to get around to it. I think the Kyber network put out a proposal that works pretty well for IPC between EOS chain. There's a real significant worry about bloat in these schedule changes, which are required. Every time a schedule change occurs, IBC has to track it. There's a real significant worry there that if we start rotating producers in through a smart contract of sorts, that we're going to end up with just 10 to 20 schedule changes. So if you're moving in, I think they were saying once every 2 hours, they want to test it. Yeah, so you'd be adding about 12 per day. Right now, we average about once every 8 hours has been the average over the course of the entire chain. I think nowadays we're close, that number is a little bit smaller. We're getting close to like once every 12 hours for schedule change. So if we move that to once every 2 hours, we're basically increasing the amount of data required to run a light client by 6x. I don't know exactly what the number is right now that's required. Maybe that number is still small enough that it's handleable, but it's not something I've done too much research with people, and so there's concern around that.
For that solution, the rescheduling on the schedule that doesn't occur in our proposal. It does occur. It goes up by what? From three times a day to 12 times a day on the ChainRift solution. Okay, maybe we can get some more details on.
The other issue is also that you have to hit some threshold of votes in that smart contract for it to be useful. We could end up in a weird situation where we don't, if the contract's running. I guess I think they said they had safeguards in place against that. The contract wouldn't run. It wouldn't execute anything unless it had the required threshold of votes to actually trigger anything. But we could end up in a weird situation where we're testing standby block production for 12 hours, and then we run out of the votes to do it, and then we're not doing it for 12 hours, then we're doing it for 12 hours. It could be on and off to switch kind of thing, which has the good parts of that is that we can cycle the solution in and out. So this could be like, this is the solution we want now. And then later on, if we want a different solution like a hard fork, we can just take the votes out of this contract and it'll disappear. But if we want something really permanent, it's going to take a little bit more work to gather all the block pieces around to do it. But once we have a hard fork in place, I know Block One has a hard fork scheduled for a few months from now. I don't have too many details on when they have that scheduled for. But if we get a change directly into there, and what that would do is it would probably have to modify the schedule in some way. We're looking into whether we can do this without modifying the schedule at all. That would be ideal. But right now, how block validation works right now is that there's 21 producers in the schedule that's published, and those 21 signing keys published along with those. And if the block comes from any of the valid signing keys, it's considered valid if it's at the right time. What we can try and do is maybe try and figure out a way where we can keep that schedule as is and still rotate block producers in. But I haven't been able to personally come up with anything yet on it. I don't think we're looking a little bit more into it.
Okay.
So what we'd have to do is we'd have to add a few signing keys to the valid set. Yeah.
Well, it looks like, yeah, we're still hashing out exactly what needs to be done. We got a little bit of time, being the fact that there's only been, 5 million, 7 million voted. It looks like there's still some time continuing on that. Ryan, thank you for your work putting this up and trying to get the proxies incentivized to go out and give great direction. I appreciate you for that.
We got one more detail.
Go for it, Kedar.
Yeah. The block producer multi-sig right now is set up so that it's 15 out of 21. I think we've concluded at this point that the way to do that, the way to handle the multi-sig is to not change it at all. Any backup producers that get rotated in won't have access to that 21st voting slot. That just becomes too much of a hassle to figure out properly. So if you're in the top 21, you still maintain any voting rights you get as part of the top 21. Backup cycling in would be just to make sure that that you're prepared for production in case you come up to it. And one overall issue with this whole like rotating producers in system that we're talking about is that the block producers optimize latencies between their previous producer in the production and the next producer in the production. If we're having rotating producers coming in, we're going to see a lot of drop blocks between number 20 and 21 just because no one's going to be optimized. No one's going to be optimizing their connection to the 20th producer. And it's unrealistic to expect, or sorry, not the 20th producer, but whoever's before them in the chain in that rotation. And it's unrealistic to expect whoever that producer is that gets stuck behind the 21st slot, which would probably be whoever's last in alphabetical order. It's unrealistic to expect them to sync up good latency connections with 20 to 30 backups, or 5 in our case. I think ChainRift is, I think, closer to like 10, 20, something like that. So that's something we're all gonna have to watch out for. And we gotta make sure before we implement any of these that rotating producers isn't just gonna lead to drop blocks where we end up testing not necessarily the production readiness of the backup producers, but instead their latency connection with whatever the final producer in the schedule is.
That's a good point. So the unintended consequence of additional drop blocks while we're trying to test this out. Obviously we're going to run this in testnet first because the solution, but there is the potentiality of this, right now at least causing more harm than it does good.
Yeah. It's possible.
So something for us all to be keeping our eye out on. Thank you for the update, Kedar. While we have Igor here, we're talking a little bit about EVB. We're talking about your full history bounty or your full history Hyperion solution. If you want to get in a little bit on that, we'd all love to hear from you directly.
Oh, hi Tim. Glad to join here. Thanks for the invite. Yeah, I joined a little after the discussion, so I think I lost the topic, but
we were talking earlier about basically EVB, and that's kind of the topic of late here at Town Hall, but trying to discuss some of the differences and your full history submission for Hyperion. I know you and I discussed that a month ago or so, but would love to get your breakdown of how you currently see the proposals that are up on the system, if you're familiar with the other two proposals as well. How yours differs, and a little bit of an understanding about what you're doing.
Oh, okay, got it. So basically, Hyperion began way before AVB was proposed by EOSRIO. We started to focus on different action structure, like a standard to propose, but it wasn't until there was like a formal structure for us to put it to the public, and that's where EVB came in, that we actually started working on it as an open source project, because until that it was one of our side projects that we started to look a little more into it, since Mainnet was having a lot of those history issues that everyone was talking about, although wasn't huge issues in the end because it wasn't actual consensus data. It was just for applications, but we saw the need to tackle it at the moment. And then we tried to implement something that would reduce the blockchain data, and while making it easier for developers to use history data. So if basically the implementation for the standard that we are proposing, the first implementation is using Elasticsearch as a database engine, and I think this is what is mostly different from the other proposals, right? I'm aware of Ethic Labs working on Cassandra also. I think both solutions can be complementary. Actually, they don't compete with the same direct goal. Of course, indirectly, both are history solutions, but directly, Cassandra is more of a data storage and not exactly a search engine. So if you want to extract data in a more complex way, I would go with Elasticsearch. If you want to extract data faster and directly from blocks, transactions, and actions, let's say sorted by global sequence or something more specifically indexed, I would go for Cassandra as well. So it's good in that point. So we actually plan to split we planned to split the solution Hyperion into two databases, basically Elasticsearch for recent data and something that could be Cassandra as well for previously older data that doesn't need more complex query in the day-to-day usage, let's say like this. But in the last Elasticsearch version, there was a new feature that allowed us to use different tiers of storage in the same cluster, and then we decided to go for that to make the system a little bit simpler. But I think that idea is still pretty much valid for several applications.
Igor, so explain a little bit about in our last conversation, you talked about removing a good amount of the inline actions, repeated inline actions. Is that still your plan? And can you, if so, can you go over a little bit about what those are, and then your thoughts on potential sloppy development that could be affected by losing those? Is that a possibility at all?
Yeah, actually, we are not losing the inline actions. Just for clarification, what we do change is any duplicated data from inline actions get aggregated into the notification pattern. So for the developer, it's barely unnoticeable unless he needs to directly search an action for its global sequence, which is, I haven't seen that use case yet. You usually search for actions based on the transaction ID, for instance, and in this case, all the actions that compose that transaction will appear, but any action that was inline action that was used as a notification mechanism, since they have the same data, will be aggregated into the same action. And in Hyperion, we always keep the link to the parent action. So if the developer wants to reconstruct the action execution tree, it can be done as well, because they have the link. So we are not in terms of let's say in terms of data, data science, we are not losing information here. We reduce data without losing information. It's basically roughly comparing like a lossless compression. This change. Of course, there are other fields that we choose to remove, but we believe those fields they are only useful for like thorough validation of the consensus data, and if this is required, it can be done on demand. It doesn't need to be on the index.
Explain that a little bit. You did that. It always just like, call me here just a little bit of worried about the concept of losing some of this other potential data or access to it if no one is running the full history. Is there any worry that you have at all to explain how it could be called on demand if it's not being stored by anyone else?
Sure. The validation, the signature of a transaction happen at the transaction level, right? So if you want to validate that the transaction was really signed by that block producer, for example, or the account that signed it, you can always go to the chain API, which all full nodes are running, and extract that information from the blocks.
But if there's if this is the full node solution and everyone moves to this, and just thinking this out loud, everyone does move to this, what full nodes would you be referring to?
No. Hyperion is not a full node, is a full history. Okay. That's the difference.
Yeah.
I mean full node by all nodes that have the block log, the complete block log, the 100 and 200 gigabytes block log.
Okay, I mean, so
okay.
if everyone is running, so that's the difference being. Well, I mean, how many people now are going to be running full node? Most everyone.
Oh, yeah.
So
probably have thousands of that.
Yeah. So this is something that is not really going to be affecting that whatsoever. You'd still be able to go to those. Now, programmatically, do you think that there's anyone who's been calling for some of the things that you're looking at in difference and just looking back at code that might break? Do you envision? Is there anything that you look at right now? Do we have the potential?
Yeah, so as far as I talked with developers, no one was using any feature that we didn't include, we didn't cover in the Hyperion API spectrum. That's why we have been designed like that. So, and if there is a use case, we can try to adapt, because since Hyperion is pushing data from the state history plugin, it's very easy to even push the full action or transaction on demand from Hyperion. This is not implemented yet because we didn't saw the need for that. But if any developers needs more data that requires on-demand fetching of actions, it can be done.
Well, thank you for the update. Now, when you look over the other submissions, have you reviewed the other submissions at all, Igor? Anything you'd like to say to compare or contrast about the other submissions?
I was talking about the Ethic Labs Cassandra solution.
Yep.
And I'm not very familiar with the other one, which...
The Nairobi is the Cassandra solution.
No. Yeah. This is sorry, it's from the proposals from Nairobi, but I was aware that Ethic Labs was working Cassandra, so that's got me confused. But I'm a little more familiarized with the Cassandra, and I did my thoughts on that. I think both are complementary. We might, if we have Hyperion and any Cassandra-based solution running at the same time, we can probably developers can probably direct queries that are faster in one or other, because they are, I don't believe all the queries that can be done in Elasticsearch will be available directly from Cassandra. Maybe they need some post-processing. And that's my view on that. They are not exactly competing on the same database space. But the other solution that I was not aware of was from Blocksmith and EOS Detroit, and I've never heard of Ryak, so I still need to study on that.
Neither have I. Maybe we can get them on to discuss what that is.
Yeah.
Thank you for the breakdown there, Igor. Luka from ChainRift, notice you're on. If you'd like to give a little breakdown real quick on your proposal, and yeah, we can hear your contrasting views on the other proposals for the standby bounty as well.
Yeah, hi everybody. So basically our proposal is in 3 stages. Right now we basically, well, we got a lot of feedback that we should just go with soft forked one. This is like the 2nd stage, which is basically a modification of the system contract. And that contract will basically, well, it will rotate all the producers that are paid, and it will rotate every 4 hours. It will rotate the producer in for 1 shadow change, and then if it produces blocks, that's it. And if it doesn't produce blocks, it will unrack him. So basically, and that will stop the rewards coming to the to that producer. So in that way, we will basically also incentivize that they do have their nodes ready for production. Now our proposal does have like another stage, and that's a random beacon solution. The reason for that is, well, if we just randomly choose producers right now, we can use transactions as a proof of stake as our random, but that's gameable. Basically, producers can grind the state and influence who will be chosen next, which is not a great long-term solution. So we also thought about it and designed basically the decentralized version for random providing, and also well, we basically design all the cases. What happens if random is not disclosed and so on. So basically, there's like a threshold mechanism, and also there are fraud proofs. So if somebody that provided the randoms didn't provide the usable shares, he can basically be punished for it as well. And so our proposal is basically 3 months for the 2nd stage solution. Then we test this, deploy this, and in the future we develop the random beacon and then add it at the 9-month mark. So that's an overview.
Sure. Kedar, do you have any questions directly for Luka about his solution?
Yeah, how many producers are you guys going to rotate in?
Well, we'll put all the producers in the list, all the paid one. So it's about 60, I think. I didn't check the last number.
Not sure if you were on at the time, Luka. We were discussing a little bit about the possibility of missed blocks due to the inability for block production to kind of more efficiently route data between these new randoms. So as the other block producers come on, the efficiencies that we lose from the current data structure for sending information between, we're not going to have that any longer. So we might be looking at some dropped packets, probably from whomever the new standby is to the existing users and vice versa. Do you have any thoughts on a solution for that, or have you guys looked into any of the problems that might cause?
So from our perspective, if we are testing them, then we should test them. Now, if they fail, we will basically unrag them for this, because of this. And also if they register right away and then fail again in the next round, this is like 10 days. In practice, it should be like 10 days from one testing to another. If they fail again, then they will be punished, and they won't be able to register for like 15 days.
Yeah, fully understand that. I think I'm more referring to the route optimization and the some of the other techniques that we deploy right now to create lower latency between the handoffs. So the block producer handoffs, the latency might be affected through this process. Currently, there's optimization that's done in between the block producers themselves, and being able to optimize to the additional set of 60 might be a good amount of work to be able to do that. But ultimately, once this is removed, because that optimization isn't there, we're likely going to see some missed blocks. Probably in the handoff from the new producer to the existing strong set. Kedar suggested that it would actually get handed off to the producer that is in alphabetically the last of the order, and that there might be some more slippage in block production from that. So if it's not something that you are aware of, something that you might want to be looking into, I think that we need to make sure that we're...
For their solution, they would end up passing the blocks between, it would just slot their producer into whatever alphabetical order they're in. So they would have to, so we're asking, like, there's a lot of work that goes into reducing block producer latencies. Igor can speak to that. He does a lot of work with that with EOSRIO. This is a general question too, for like just the idea of rotating producers in. This isn't specific to your solution. We were wondering if you've put any thought into whether rotating producers in is going to cause a lot of drop blocks. Because 500 milliseconds isn't a lot to execute a handoff. And if we have random producers popping in that aren't pre-optimized to do a handoff between specific servers, it could cause a lot of issues.
Right. I mean, we didn't test it, and we do understand that this could be a problem, but we kind of want to test it and see how it goes and what optimizations need to be deployed then. So from that perspective, I guess there's still some work to be done there. I mean, we basically need to also decide what to optimize for, right? Are we optimizing for testing all the producers? I mean, what are our goals? Are our goals to test a couple of them? Are our goals to test all of them? Then is this fair for all others that well, basically should all paid producers be tested? Because otherwise we just have a producer that registers and maybe they don't even run a node. And if they can be sure that they will never be selected, then why should they care? So from our perspective, this is basically the main design goal. The design goal was to test all the producers, and then we try to minimize all other things that come with it, like handout problems.
That's probably a good concept. I do agree. Making sure that people are available and are going to be ready is definitely a part of the solution. Making sure that we need to have everyone tested that is especially getting paid to operate the network,
Yeah.
even though a lot of people haven't actually been operating or haven't been called up yet. Making sure that they're doing well on the way. Well, I appreciate you going through that, understanding Luka. Maybe it'd be a good idea for you guys and us over here at LibertyBlock to coordinate and get together, and since maybe even try to invite in Node 1, since we three are the groups that have created proposals. Maybe we should get off and spend a little bit longer time and see if we can't help each other out. Maybe even craft something that's now a more fully baked solution between all three. So I'll ping you on Telegram and see if we can all get closer together and just think about the things that we're thinking about and try to get the right solution out to the community. So that being said, I appreciate everyone's time today. This is going to get thrown up on the EOS Town Hall YouTube, and we'll spread it out to the channels. Ideally, from the proxy side, anyone who's in a proxy here, send this to the other proxies. Get this out and get people to understand what it is we're all thinking about. We all care a lot about this network. A lot of exciting things are happening to this network and for this network. B1 June is I think going to be some pretty interesting announcements out in Washington, D.C. And if we start getting ready for this crowd of people that I think will be using this network over the next year, we all have to be ready as producers and making sure that this network is not only stable, but it is secure and it is fast. So thank you for joining us this week. And till next time, this is EOS Town Hall. Appreciate you all. Have a good day.